follow-up in reference to yesterday's incident at the Jacksonville International Airport. 2:21 p.m. yesterday, JSO SWAT team members were following up on an auto theft case that occurred on May 7th. That case involved the suspect Addison, who I mentioned yesterday, that was driving a stolen car on May 7th. He fled from detectives on that day. It was at that point they attempted to stop him. He fled from him and fled from the car. Information was obtained that he was a driver, and an arrest warrant was issued at that time last week. Yesterday, the SWAT team members received information that the suspect was in the 6500 block of Norwood Avenue on Jacksonville's north side. They responded to that area, they spotted the vehicle, and saw it leaving from Norwood headed north on I-95. The detectives verified that Addison was inside the car, and they followed the car while waiting for backup. At that point in time, the car pulled into the rental car return parking garage at the Jacksonville International Airport. The car stopped abruptly, and the driver of the car exited the vehicle. It was described that the driver got out in an attempt almost to see who was following him. When the detectives saw that he had done this, it was at that point they made a decision to apprehend him and take him into custody at that point in time. One detective pulled their vehicle in front of the suspect's car. Another detective pulled up directly behind the suspect's car. That detective pulled up immediately to the rear of his bumper, blocking him in, or so they thought. The suspect got back into the car and put the vehicle in reverse, rammed the detective who was still in his car behind the suspect's car, and then pulled up in an attempt to escape. The two detectives who had pulled in front of the car to block it actually had to jump out of the way when the suspect struck their vehicle. The suspect then backed up again, striking the occupied police vehicle for the second time. Struck another, it was an unoccupied rental car in the garage, and then continued in reverse through the garage, backing out through the garage. It was that point in time that one of the detectives made a decision to use his issued AR-15. I mentioned his name yesterday. That's 9-year veteran JSO Detective Edward Rogers. He fired 3 shots from his issued AR-15 at the car. That car was struck all 3 times. The vehicle continued to flee, this time in forward. It was going the wrong way through the exit through the garage. They put a description out of the vehicle on the police radio. The officers weren't injured, and there were no other citizens injured or property struck in the parking garage. I mentioned they put out the radio description of the vehicle. The patrol officers in the north side area, being vigilant, they found that vehicle in the Monaco Arms Apartments on Monaco Drive. There was a subject who was standing there with the car. Now, at the same time, this should clear up some confusion that there was yesterday. At the same time as all this happened, the Sheriff's Office received a 911 call from the Highlands Elementary School at 1000 DePaul Drive. That was in reference to somebody being shot. It was the 17-year-old male who had made that 911 call, lied about what had happened to the 911 dispatcher, saying that an unknown person had shot him. He was transported to Shands Hospital, treated and released with non-life-threatening injuries of a gunshot wound to his leg. That gunshot wound was one of the gunshot wounds received when the officer discharged his firearm. That 17-year-old male later cooperated with us. He told us that Addison was the driver of the car, was the one who had attempted to run over the 2 detectives, struck the other car. He was not charged with any crime last night and continues to cooperate with the police. The subject that I mentioned that was found with that Crown Victoria, he was the registered owner of the car. He was not found to be associated with the events at the airport at all. As a matter of fact, it was unknown to the detectives at that time, but the white Crown Victoria involved in this had been reported stolen on the 9th of May. I mentioned yesterday the detective involved in this was placed on administrative leave, which is standard per our policy. At this point in time, 20-year-old Rodney Lorenzo Addison remains at large. He's facing additional charges from yesterday's attempt to run over the 2 officers and actually striking the other officer in his car. Anybody with information as to Mr. Addison's whereabouts is encouraged to first be careful. He's dangerous, as evidenced by his actions yesterday. And they can remain anonymous. Call Crime Stoppers at 866-845-TIPS. That's 866-845-8477, or the Sheriff's Office. I'd like to thank Jacksonville Aviation Authority and their police department for their assistance yesterday. It was a chaotic scene, and it came together. together well, and their cooperation was greatly appreciated. I can answer a few questions in reference to this.
At the point when officers were realizing that this car was headed toward the airport, would it have been smarter to try to stop it then before getting into such a crowded place?
Their intent was to do so. They were waiting on the other detectives and other officers to come as backup. Again, they knew his dangerous past, and there was only 2 of them, 3 people in the car. Officer safety is a concern, obviously, that we take. That was part of the decision tree that they used, and he went into there. There was some thought that he may have been stealing cars from the airport as well, and that was kind of verified as he went there, because there's been no other reason that you would have thought that he would have gone in there. So just part of what they decided. But the person in charge of this was Mr. Addison. All he had to do was stop and give up. He elected to not do that. He elected to take that several thousand-pound vehicle and attempt to kill 3 police officers with that. So.
Was it a high-speed chase going into the airport?
No, they were actually just following him.
Did they have their lights on at the time?
No, these were unmarked cars. They were equipped with lights, but they were making no attempts to stop him at that point in time. They were just surveilling him, waiting for that second car to come up. When the car went into the garage, the second detective came up, and things kind of happened there. It was when they noticed that he probably figured something was up, got out of the car. That's all they can surmise being why he would have got out of the car, because he got out of the car and looked as if he'd been caught.
Any weapons found in the suspect's car, or any evidence that they may have been
carrying a weapon? That car was transported from the apartments yesterday out to our warehouse. Currently, right at this point in time, the detectives are going through that car. They've not entered the car. They're processing that car. So at this point in time, no weapon has been found. The 17-year-old cooperated and did advise that the subject was armed at the time. But that gun, at this point in time, has not been found, but it still could be found.
Do you think Addison ran at the airport? Was he around there, or did he run after the car drove away?
Still trying to piece that part together. We had some information that there was a subject who was seen getting into a cab yesterday at the airport. Have not been able to confirm that was Addison or not. That we did have a witness out at Monaco Arms who saw 3 occupants in the car get out. So it's possible that he could have fled the car as well.
And these other 2 guys are not in any trouble right now?
No, the 17-year-old, again, he cooperated after realizing that the story that he had told about being shot wasn't true. He quickly changed his story, began to cooperate with us, and has been cooperating since. We use that cooperation, and he will not be facing charges at this time. And the male that was found with the car, again, he had just so happened to see his car, which was legitimately reported stolen on the 9th, so he doesn't face charges either.
Any reward money in this for someone who turns in Addison at this point?
It's $1,000 available through Crime Stoppers, and you can remain anonymous with that. So we encourage anybody who knows his whereabouts to give us a call.
How was that car able to get away with so many officers being there at that point?
Well, again, he rammed 2 of the officers' cars, wrecked another car in attempts to get away. There was no means by which to ultimately stop him. They had made attempts to do that, to pin him in, and his car was able to push the other cars out of the way and wreck it and get away.
So the owner of the car wasn't at the airport?
The owner of the car was not at the airport. The owner of the car was at Monaco Arms.
Well, what about the third guy?
Yeah, who's the third guy?
You got a kid.
Third guy is an unidentified male who was in the vehicle. So we're working with that 17-year-old who's cooperating with us to help piece that together. That's part of our ongoing investigation.
So he's MIA right now?
He has not been either fully identified or located.
Was there hesitation to open fire in the middle of that parking garage, knowing that there was a lot of airport goers right there?
Understand that when you say hesitation, there's always discernment when you employ deadly force, when you take your gun out of its holster, when you elect to use it. Your backdrop is a consideration, citizens around are a consideration, but also the safety of the general public and the safety of those other officers is a consideration as well. These things are measured in microseconds from an officer. I alluded yesterday that what we do is a dangerous thing. What we do is a fast-paced thing, and our decision, where others have days to decide, we have mere microseconds to decide. That's always taken into consideration, and it was yesterday as well.
You mentioned yesterday they were essentially armed with a deadly weapon,
Yes.
being a car.
Well, not only are they armed with a deadly weapon, Addison showed his tendency to use that and repeatedly use that. So it's not just that he was armed with the weapon that he could use. He showed that he was not only armed but willing to use it.
Any other questions?
So you said that Addison will face additional charges in connection with his actions yesterday. So what would those charges be?
That would be 2 attempts or aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer from attempting to hit the 2 detectives, as well as potentially 2 counts of aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer for actually striking and ramming the car that was occupied by the detective.
Okay, thanks.
Do we know why all these previous Grand Theft Autos were dropped or banned?
No, I don't. But again, it shows that Addison is, if nothing else, a car thief. And that was exemplified yesterday by him. And again, that may be the reason that he decided to go out to the airport.
Do you think he's still in Jacksonville? Any reason to believe he would run?
His arrests have been here local. His contacts with the sheriff's office have been local, so I don't have anything that would lead me to believe that. But again, without a crystal ball to know what he could do, anything's possible. But I do know he's dangerous, and I do know he's out there, and I do know we'd like to have him in custody.
Any other?
Any idea why he went to that specific apartment complex after the airport? Is that where he lives? Did he have family members there?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.